place in 1986 in Angeles City in the Philippines. So this is like a picture from their house. This is right about when she was in high school. So I think she went to high school from like 1984 to 1988. And this was right at the end of the dictator rulership of Ferdinand Marcos, and also the end of martial law in the Philippines. So it was a very funky time for everyone present. She describes this time as right at the rise of new wave music in the Philippines, where all the cool kids watched MTV for like the new music videos coming out. She first discovered Duran Duran through her friend at high school. She was talking about how there was this really, really cute guy named John Taylor in this new up-and-coming hit band, Duran Duran. So I believe John Taylor is the one on the right, and I do admit he is very, very pretty. And in fact, this friend was so infatuated by John Taylor, she actually changed her name to JT, and she actually goes by JT to this day, like 30 years later. My ninang, who was very, very confused by like what all the fuss was about, decided to watch a couple music videos here and there. And I feel like we all know that feeling where you watch a couple music videos and then you watch a couple more and then you watch a couple more. And that is exactly what happened to my aunt. She watched a couple music videos here and there, listened to some of the songs like Save a Prayer, Girls on Film, and she was really captivated by how creative and different it was. She told me that she had just remembered it so vividly, how after she had heard their music, she just had to know more. So she ran to the store to pick up a magazine by them, read a couple paragraphs by them, and instantly she just thought, oh my gosh, this is such a great group. Which ultimately led me to ask why. What specifically about Duran Duran made them stick out from the countless other bands in the 1980s that were, up and coming? And she told me it was just something completely different from what she knew. She knew about Americans because of the nearby US Navy base, so that wasn't anything new. She knew about Filipinos because she's been raised here her whole life. But Europeans were something completely different for her, and she had no clue that Europe had even existed at this time. Not only that, but the Philippines was just getting out of martial law after the overthrow of this long-reigning dictator, so in a way, listening to this new wave music that's all electronic and synthesized and weird and funky felt like an act of rebellion in a way. So my ninang quickly became fascinated by this new UK culture introduced to her, becoming infatuated with the royal family and, the different counties and cities in the UK and all that. There, they dressed differently, they made different music, and they spoke differently. It was just like a whole new universe to her, really. Being a fan of Duran Duran manifested itself in many different ways for my ninang. Guys at school started to adapt this janky Miami Vice look with these double-breasted suits and their really gaudy v-necks and these loafers. Guys at school started to wear eyeliner, and the girls too, but they had to do it in secret after school since they went to a Catholic school and makeup was strictly not allowed. There were get-togethers after school with my ninang, and my aunt, being a cheerleader, would actually choreograph different sets and routines to different Duran Duran songs with her friends, which I think is very, very funny. So at different pep rallies and stuff, everyone in the crowd would be singing along as they danced to it. There were listening parties and watch parties after school as well, trips to the store to buy magazines and merch together. Really, their whole friend group's activities really revolved around Duran Duran. While my ninang never actually got to see Duran Duran perform live in the Philippines, coincidentally, all of my aunt's high school friends and her moved to Southern California for college at the exact same time. This was not planned, but when they realized that they were all in Southern California for school, they realized that Duran Duran was touring and was performing at Universal Studios, and they realized that they could actually afford tickets, so they pooled all their money together and took a road trip to Universal Studios, ended up in the orchestral section, and I asked my aunt to describe the concert, and she just got so nostalgic, and she was like, I remember when the lights dimmed and then John Taylor was spotlit, and then it was gonna be Simon Le Bon and then John Taylor and then Nick Rhodes and all of them, and then the Reflex was playing, and then she told me how she just started crying without realizing why, and then she told me it felt like her soul had come out of her body because she couldn't believe she was seeing John Taylor in the flesh. And I was like, wow, I feel like I can really relate to this feeling, but I just couldn't imagine my aunt being so fangirlish at anything, really. So it was really interesting to hear. I ended the interview asking my aunt about the lasting impact Duran Duran had on her life, if any, and to which she immediately responded, of course, that they had an impact. They were, to her, like, she was just a very small-minded, naive, like, young high school girl who really only knew, like, America and the Philippines. And once Duran Duran was introduced to her, her perspective and, like, worldview really broadened, and she discovered this new kind of country and their different cultures and aspects to them. So this is a picture of my aunt's cassette that she still has of Duran Duran after all this time. And through my aunt's retelling of her fan experience, it is very evident that Duran Duran played a huge role in her life, from providing her this rebellious outlet in her younger teen years, to bringing her closer to her social group, to overall just broadening her worldview. Using the framework of the uses and gratifications theory specifically, my aunt's affinity for Duran Duran would most likely be classified as personal identity, integration and social interaction, as well as information seeking. So in terms of, personal identity, my aunt really not only got to go through her rebellious phase, through not only rebelling against the Philippine government and her school, and I guess just the status quo by listening to like very new wave funky music, but also she discovered a lot of sense of style through this because she tried to copy the way that Duran Duran looked and got to explore and experiment around a lot with her femininity. In terms of like the social aspect, I think that one's pretty evident. Just the fact that her friend group's entire, activities all surrounded Duran Duran, and the fact that she's still friends with these exact same people 30 years later really shows that this was a very, very deep tie for them. And perhaps most importantly, Duran Duran expanded her universe really, going once again from this young, naive high school girl who really only knew like the limits of her hometown to finally being thrust into this world of European culture and getting to see what's really out there, kind of sparked something with her in her. And she told me that to this day, she still wants to go to London because she has not been, but once this pandemic is over, she hopes she will go. Thank you.